of mine. And then when she applied for the faculty position, I was on her hiring committee. She owes me a lot.
I do, and he never lets me forget that. I was going to say, I have not counted how many students that I have because I am amongst the math challenge. So I'm not even going to start to count those. Now, I don't know, Michael, if you realize this, but I have attended every one of your community conversations.
Really?
Yes, I'm like a fan, right? And I know that you do this one thing at the beginning of every community conversation. You tell a joke. You're like the master of joke telling. So I have prepared, I enlisted my 7-year-old granddaughter, and I said, I need to have a joke to start out that will just impress Michael.
I had an intro for you.
You do? Oh, see, you crashed my joke already. So, are you giving the... So my joke, I wanted something about a place. So here's my 7-year-old granddaughter's joke. Where is a pirate's favorite place to go eat? Do you know it? You want to tell it? Yeah. Okay.
Arby's.
One more, because I wasn't sure if that one would bomb or not. Where is a pirate's favorite place to go shopping?
I don't know.
Target.
Oh, Target. Sure.
Okay, I'm a novice.
Where's the camera? So is this a good place for us to be? Okay. Let's see, I didn't bring a joke, but I have a couple of anecdotes. My wife was laughing hysterically at me the other day, and I said, "What are you laughing at?" And she said, "Well, I read it's healthy to laugh at your mistakes."
Ooh.
Oh! And I said, "Well, you drew your eyebrows on a little too high today." She looked surprised. Okay, I can go on. One more.
Where's the cane? Anybody have the hook?
I would always tell jokes in the classrooms to students. They would always laugh. And so when we went to all online, I would tell the jokes online. Nobody laughed. I asked my students why. And they told me, "Michael, your jokes are not remotely funny."
Okay, we're gonna start.
Let's start with this. How can we not start with this? Like probably most, if not all of you, with a recent shooting in Texas, another one yesterday in Oklahoma, I often feel so overwhelmed and then helpless because there's nothing really I can do. And that's not true. All of us can do something. So the Sandy Hook Promise is a great organization to do this. And EndingSchoolShootings.org is a clearinghouse, a resource. So if you go to that website, they will list all kinds of organizations that actually help families, help children, also lobbying for changes in gun laws, those kinds of things as well. So we just wanted to give you an idea of possibly some things that you could do. And of course, if you have money, which many of us don't, but even a little bit, you can send it, especially the Sandy Hook Promise. But if you look closer, there are GoFundMe pages specifically for, what's the name of the Texas town? Uvalde, for that school, for that town. And I think they've raised well over $5 million just for that by now. You can talk with people about this. The one thing everyone can do that really costs nothing is contact our representatives, send them an email, write them a personal letter or something. At least you're involved in doing something.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
I know I was sending articles to all my children, for my grandchildren, nieces and nephews and their children, about how do I talk to my kids about this? Because they're going to hear it, whether they watch news or not. They'll go to school, they'll hear about it, etc. So that's always a good thing. And which one? Ending Schools has a lot of resources like that.
And National Association of the Education of Young Children, which is NIAC, NAEYC, has some of those. And also there's an online free subscription to a magazine called Learning for Justice. And that also has some great resources for you on how to talk to children about things like this.
So today, the talk is first, what is a third place?
Michael, can I start right here first?
You can.
I'm gonna go because I brought props. I got to use my props. So we are going to talk about what is a third place. And so I thought, let's start with the first place. And I'm going to give you a clue. Where do you think a person's first place is? I've got ruby red slippers.
Oz?
What's the
No.
clue? Oz is not the first place. Home, exactly. And Lucas Myers had a conversation last week about what is home. Talked about attachment to a place, that identity attachment. He also explained why I have some difficulties while I travel, which was new to me. And it was very reassuring that I'm not alone. And so for our time today, we're going to talk about home gives us that place of belonging. The second place, I'm giving a little shout out to our nursing program and our medical community. Can you guess where the second place is? Work. And work gives us a sense of purpose. So we have belonging from home, purpose at work, and then we'll move to the third place.
How many of you have gone to regularly go to Starbucks? A couple of you, too expensive for me. But there is a difference between third space theory and third place, but third places is taken from that theory on third space, and we'll talk about the difference a little bit. But a good place to start is with Starbucks, because they had one little coffee espresso bar in Seattle at Pike's Market. And as they began to expand in the 80s, they just tried to replicate that, and it wasn't very successful. But they paid attention to their customers who said, we want places to sit, we want to be able to stay and talk. And they used this book, this author, Ray Oldenburg, The Great Good Place, as a catalyst for that, using those ideas. So we have Starbucks, how many stores throughout the world now? I know back in probably the early 90s, late 80s, someone came to me and say, Michael, wouldn't you want to invest in Starbucks? No, turn that down like I did Apple. Anyway, so such a great history if we look backwards though. The English pubs, taverns, cafes. Well, also that falls into that is churches fall into that as well too. Could LCC be a third space? Could community conversations be a third space? You might be able to answer that by the time that we are done.
The first time I ever heard of the term third place was in a magazine article years ago when it said Starbucks has taken the place of the church for the majority of Americans' third place. And as we talk today, you're going to see that that third place is that place that gives us community.
What did people do, let's say in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century English pubs? Drink, of course, but they went there to strategize about whether it was political movements or work reforms or who's sleeping with who or whatever it was. It was a constant place that people could go and feel comfortable. Historically, too, disenfranchised groups, oppressed groups have absolutely had to create third spaces in order to bring them together. If you were Black in America in the South, you couldn't go into just any theater. It had to be labeled as Black or drink out of a fountain. But since we're thinking about places, the church probably became the most powerful third place for African Americans because they just weren't allowed in all of those other spaces too. Barbershops too. So that's a poster from the first barbershop movie, if you're familiar with them. And these are still really important, essential third places.
I think of the movie Coming to America. Remember that? The barbershop scenes in there.
And then, without put this up since it was June, the Stonewall Inn. So gay, lesbians, transgender always needed separate third places because of what? A fear of assault, being arrested, all of those things. So certainly there were a lot of bars, inns, pubs for gays, but in June 28th, 1969, at the Stonewall Inn in New York, they had, this group of regulars had it with Stonewall Inn, being arrested all the time. They would be raided by the police. So they began protesting. Third, where did all the planning take place for the protests? In the Stonewall Inn. So this has happened over and over again, that a third place can be, can cause terrific change in society. By the way, every year after that, on June 28th, is generally people are celebrating. And June is the National LGBTQ month, so keep that in mind as well. Somebody want to read? You could read it out loud. There's a reason there's such a strong fight over lunch counters in the civil rights movement. The spaces of our daily lives are very important for our cities and our society. What this means, since it's from Justin Moore, is that architects are really steeped in this education. When they are building spaces, especially cities and towns, it's always important to add a third space for citizens, people in the community, to gather and to talk and feel comfortable in doing that. It makes sense, especially after Stonewall and race riots, that we always keep this in mind. There are so many spaces that are not safe for some people and some groups of people. Oh, it's me. I'm going to talk about the first half in the okay. So can you see that up here better, I think? These are the hallmarks, and think about this as ideal third spaces, that if you have a third space, now, does Starbucks really work here? Is it free or inexpensive? No, but it might fit some of the other characteristics. And food and drink aren't especially important. To me, they are. I'm a much better communicator if I've had a little wine and a little food and all of that. But these are kind of, just the kind of the basics here. Highly accessible. There aren't going to be barriers to anyone from getting there, or there shouldn't be. And if there were barriers, probably people that utilize this third space would probably try to find ways to get other regulars to get there. Close, you're not going to have to get on a plane or a bus or take an Uber. It should be fairly close. Most urban planners try to center a third place in the middle of a downtown area or someplace to make it as accessible as possible to others. Can you just think of one third space in Longview that was probably part of the planning of the city that draws a lot of people that go there regularly? Say again. The hotel or the library. What about the little park right across the street from the hotel? The Civic Circle. What about the lake? These were all intentionally planned to bring citizens together.
And remember, Michael had brought up, is community conversations one of those third places for people? Involves regulars. Many of you are regulars. I come and I sit in the back because sometimes I have to sneak out early, and I see many of you that come every week, bring your lunch. So you have those regulars that attend. It's welcoming and comfortable. Courtney's always here early to welcome people. This, and play with technology, comfortable. The chairs are kind of okay, right? It's a little comfortable.
And there's a wine bar planned for the fall, right? Yeah.
New and old friends are found there. Goes back to the regulars. Some of you can't wait to come and sit by that friend that you haven't seen since last week. You have that kind of assigned seating, and Delphine Van Zenten, Mac is usually here. I haven't seen her in the last couple times, but you have those regulars, you know where they're sitting, but you also welcome new people. So those people that haven't come before, it's a welcoming, safe place for them to enter.
Don't many people bring their lunch too and eat it? Okay, so we need food here too. So I think all presenters should bring snacks.
Good. We missed on that one. We failed. And one more. Why do people choose Starbucks over other coffee establishments? What's your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Because they got the market on it.
Because they have the market on it.
Oh, you know, the advertising.
They were kind of the first. They've got that good marketing plan.
I'll go if anybody's willing to buy for it.
What were you going to say?
Consistency, you know.
Oh, God, yeah, yeah.
People like consistency.
Go ahead.
Like, it needs an expectation. They got one on every corner. You don't have to wonder where it is. It's often close to the freeway.
So it goes back to it's accessible, it's proximate for many. You know what you're going to get. My daughter, when she was working in college, she worked as a barista in a bagel shop. And she said, boy, people really know what they want. And if I've missed that second syrup, I don't drink the stuff, so I don't know exactly what it's called. She says, I'm getting it back, or they know the temperature they want their coffee. And so those trained baristas offer that consistency.
I like the smell. And just to walk in and it just smells so good. And of course, I love to people watch. So it's a great place to be a voyeur. So
Atmosphere.
it's clean. Yeah.
I remember the first one that came here, it had a different vibe, you know, than we had in Longview. It was more kind of urban, kind of cool. So I had a lot of students that would go over there and study pre and after class because it was just kind of that cool vibe.
Do you think it was intentional that they will put one on every block if they can? Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
They did, you know, I remember in London, we went to try to get to a tea house. And we had to ask our guide, you know, where's the tea houses? She's like, bloody Yanks brought over Starbucks. No one ever they were.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, I went too fast. I'll go back. It was just a last statement there. A third space is not a place where you have to be. Although I think there could be circumstances where you have to be, but it still feels like a third space. Like maybe some of you have to be here, you know, court ordered. Or it's a class, etc.
Yep.
But it may still feel so comfortable and inviting to you, you don't think of it like that. So these are the 8 characteristics. Most of these ideas are from Oldenburg.
is this me?
This is you.
Oh, so it's very, very neutral. It's neutral ground. Okay. Status is irrelevant, economic or social. And so it really isn't even a consideration because it is not necessary, right? There's no legal, financial, or other obligation to be there unless you want to leave tips on your way out. That might be a financial obligation. Can
Would
we
they
do that?
kick? I don't know. Can we bring a tip jar if we do this again? Would they kick you out of Starbucks after a while if you didn't buy a coffee? Probably. You know, I suppose if you're there all day.
So I don't know if you can just
Yeah.
go and sit. I don't know if that's, but you know, so you might, some of the financial or other obligations, that might be some clubs that there is a fee that you have to pay to be part of that club, or you have to put in so many service hours or have some of those volunteer obligations. But your third place doesn't have any of that there's no pressure of any kind of legal obligation or financial obligation. And this is a place where once you're here in that third place, everyone feels their needs have been fulfilled, which is very interesting because everyone might come to that third place for a different need to be fulfilled, but all walk away feeling that their needs have been fulfilled from being there and being with the people that are in that third place.
And remember, these are the ideals. You might not get all of your needs met ever. And it sounds like relationships, doesn't it? It is a relationship. Again, everyone is concerned about how accessible this place is. Making accommodations for people, whether that's wheelchair access or whatever it is, yes?
Yeah.
Or making the fourth place, which we'll get to, may have to be virtual at times. Yeah. Now, I can't even do this with my own family. I shouldn't say things like that when it's being recorded. But don't you possibly go to places where you feel you're being judged? That people may have more money, more things than you, different political ideologies, et cetera. So this could be a third space that people have to let those things go. And I think it's very freeing to be able
Concerned
to
what
do
you have
that.
to wear to
Oh,
be there.
gosh. Yeah, I even wore underwear today because I knew that I should do that.
He did not. I
Here.
told him he had to.
And again, not my family, but when you have a conversation, you don't have to be afraid of being attacked. You don't have to be afraid of what you're going to say. I mean, you may get some looks, right? But you're not going to be attacked in this place. Most of the conversation, according to Oldenburg, is playful, it's witty, it's comfortable.
I read in the paper, we had a beloved coach that passed away, Coach Cranston. I don't know if any of you had him or knew him. And there was a letter to the editor, a gentleman wrote about, he had a group of people with Coach Cranston that met weekly at a breakfast place. And he said it was such a great, inviting, welcoming time that they had together. And he specifically said the conversation was always playful and witty. Even if they were talking about perhaps some political ideals and people did not disagree, it was that civil conversation and they all left having their needs fulfilled and couldn't wait for that next week to meet. And it was a wonderful letter to the editor. And I thought that was a really cool example of a third place.
I know a fairly recent conversation I had with a very ardent right-wing Trump supporter. I listened, but I also shared my ideals, but I was very listening. And when we ended the conversation, this older man said, "I can't wait to talk to you again." And I thought, oh no, what did I do? That which will be fine. That should be enjoyable, to be challenged, right? To feel uncomfortable, but still be okay in that. So to find an example for the eighth characteristic here, you feel a piece of yourself is rooted here. I've probably been here in this room with community conversations to feel like part of me is here. Maybe there's a particular classroom that some of you are teachers, or office space even that feels like I'm here, but maybe it's your church.
In preparing for this, Michael and I had some really great conversations. And in one of the conversations, we were chatting about how maybe our work was our third place. Can work be a third place? But then when you're at work, the majority of people feel that they cannot be maybe themselves in their political views, in their religious views, in their personal life stories or views. And so when you have those things that you're afraid to reveal, it really can't be that third place. The third place is where you feel safe, exposing and being vulnerable of who you are without any fear of retribution, of losing a job or not getting a promotion, those types of things. And so we kind of decided work really couldn't be a solid third place, but maybe segments of your workplace, if it's your department where you don't have a supervisor there that could make decisions on your employment, perhaps that that department could be a third place. So it was an interesting conversation.
I think we have both in here. Some of you are teachers. All of us have been students, right? But have sometimes you had a classroom. Now that we've given you the characteristics, have you been in a classroom sometimes that felt like a third place? That lots of these characteristics, these hallmarks have been there. Now that I'm not teaching anymore, I'm thinking, how could I make my classroom, in-person classroom, feel more like a third place? I think I've done that without knowing it, but.
There's an acronym and it's called SAIL for people who are instructors, and it's talking about making it the ultimate learning. You have to create a safe and secure, accepting and involved classroom. And I think that's some of those steps to make it that potential third place for students.
And it's sad that we have to put that final note there. And we were thinking more about children. You might send them off to a place you thought was a third place and safe, like a church group, a camp, or sports, or school. And we now have to be more concerned about safety than ever before. Now, we can't do this. Well, we're going to see, but I don't think it's going to work. Let me just shoot forward to the next page and just see if it's there. No, okay, it's not. Our really brilliant technician, Matt, he came over and couldn't figure it out either. But the idea here was, I'm going to go back a little, is that we would have you signed into Poll Everywhere. And then on either your computer or your phone, you could just respond to these things. We'll just ask you the questions. We have 3 of them, and you can just respond out loud. So this first one is, just tell us what is a third place presently or in the past that has been helpful or a favorite for you based upon those hallmarks and characteristics that we gave you. Yeah, go ahead. A third space within a terrible, well, I don't know what the high school was like, but yeah. Oh, yeah. I can really connect with that. I think of choir in high school was that safe space.
And research tells us to keep students in school, they do need to find that place, not in the general academics, but that's that special place with like minds and other adults. Cool.
We have a response from Zoom as well. Adam responds, you can see the evolution of design concepts that they're talking on college campuses. Newer buildings now include public non-classroom spaces for their designs for welcoming students. And that reminds me of when I was in high school and we had what used to be the phone booth, but no longer had a phone in it. And we used to pile like 8 kids in there and eat lunch together in the phone booth. And that was our place.
Fun. And that's a great point. Like when they designed this new health and science building, there are spots for students to gather within the building that is more private. Yeah.
If you haven't noticed, when you walk out of this room, just look. Right out the door, you'll see one. There's more upstairs and back in the corners. These are intentionally designed with that purpose of bringing students together so they'll be more comfortable, communicate.
Right.
In the 1800s, before that was a spot that not just picnics, but meet up with family and friends and discuss community events going on.
You mean it's not anymore? I go often, and yeah, there are not many people talk to me there. Yeah, historically, yeah.
Trey says the ballpark where you could spend hours there other than just the time of your own game.
Oh, yeah. Great
Oh
example.
yeah, the Rileys are going to be there in the Jones, and yeah, absolutely.
Pre-COVID, also McDonald's Saturday morning. I was a group of people, and let's face it, if you're a senior, the talk usually is about travel. Where you've been, where you're going. Then I went over to Tulsa Library, and YMCA. And the problem is, I'll tell you, is that show up every week on the same people, same conversations, no matter what. But you miss 2 or 3 weeks, you come back. Oh my gosh, I thought you got
Was your chair taken by somebody else?
Get
I watch
blacklisted, yeah.
people in churches and it's like, if you get in their seat, if you're a visitor, they'll sit there and they'll stand until you move, right?
Go ahead, back there.
The gym,
The gym.
yes.
Lots of regulars there, I imagine, right? Do you get much time to talk? As you can tell, I never go to a gym, but do you get a chance to talk to other people there? And yeah, so you already have a bunch of things in common. Go ahead.
Yeah,
And we
another
have a little.
place, well, for us all theater people. So Longview and the Howard areas, so Sherry's. So we'd all meet and talk about stuff that our instructors are in from Strasbourg or Stanislavski or whatever. But we'd always be there, congregate and just talk amongst each other.
And there's an old joke, and I don't remember the punchline. Where do theater people go to eat lunch? The theater. I mean, it becomes that place that they just never leave, right?
Sorry, that went right over my head. I'm not a very good partner.
I remember of always eating in the choir room at Mark Morris High School because I would get bullied if I was out in the, the larger cafeteria. So our students really need those places. And at that time, the choir instructor was just more than happy to have us come in if we do a little practice at the same time.
There was an instructor at Wahkiakum High School, and he was teaching ag, and he got a pool table and he put it in his room. And a lot of the kids that he taught were getting teased in the lunchroom, right? So this became a safe place for them to bring their lunch, shoot some pool, and congregate. Well, the word kind of got out and other students wanted to come in and shoot pool. So what was awesome is, and if you think about those hallmarks and characteristics, they had the regulars, the kids that were in the ag courses, but then other people from other groups came in and were welcomed. And so all of a sudden, and when you're in middle school and high school, it's all about who am I and how do I fit in. These students that might not necessarily interact together in other places of the school came and got to know each other and interacted with each other in this classroom that the teacher created, a very safe place for a third place.
Certainly we have a kind of a narrow focus as we're thinking about our professions. Do you think other companies have appropriated this third space idea? Yeah, besides Starbucks. This is a recent commercial here.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away?
Make sure you make that corner nice and tight.
Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
That ad makes me happy.
Courtney, can you tell them about your reaction to that when you first saw it?
My
I'm not
reaction?
Courtney, I'm Ann. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, Michael sent it and I watched it and I said, oh, this makes me cry. I mean, they were good tears, but it elicited this kind of warm, welcoming, wonderful
And
space.
psychology?
So those advertisers had me pegged.
Psychology is a huge part of marketing, and they want to appeal to kind of the lowest level emotions, family and love and belonging. And then if they get you, right, then maybe hard to let go. Maybe those of us that use Starbucks regularly have just, drank the Kool-Aid. We bought the message that they're giving us. And if they can make money on it, why not?
Yes.
And if you notice, subliminally, Starbucks just started
Oh, is it subliminal? That's what I focus on first of all. No.
No, but after you
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
the last
yeah.
of those, beer, Starbucks is doing.
Something for everyone, right?
And earlier you had mentioned a lot of times a third place has food and beverage
Yeah.
connected.
So as we kind of move towards the end of this, we wanted to talk about why it's important. Don't all of us need to get away from home at times? Yes, from work. So having someplace else to go that we feel really connected to is really important to us. The other thing, at least that all of the authors and writers, and we do have a reading suggestion list that will be at the end. And since Courtney will have this posted, you can always go to the website to get those reading suggestions. But traditionally, third places have been a catalyst for change in society, for huge political movements or workers movements, etc. So if we don't have that, well, we're going to ask the question, do we have enough third places? What are they like today? As well, I'm going to guess that many of us, especially if we are introverted, that we feel a lot of anxiety or depression, we often need a place that's going to support me if I don't have a family or friends to do that. I think this might, and I'll mention this again, especially true of our seniors. Is there much in the Longview area that do the third places in Longview, do you think, are they anchoring our community life here? I mean, this is one of them, but it certainly can't be the only one. Maybe the question is rhetorical. It's something for us to think about.
Sure. And I was looking at this, Michael, too, and another slide that's coming up. During the pandemic, and I am only speaking from that educator's lens, teachers many times at the end of the week go out together and they'll talk about the week, they will share a meal, share a beverage, and they have that time to process. During the pandemic, they didn't have that, right? We were all locked down, restaurants were closed, and we have had a mass exodus of teachers, both during the pandemic and then right after coming back. They've just left the field. And I wonder if losing that third place or space has played a role in that. It's just kind of I wonder from doing some of this research, if because they didn't have that place for that support that they have depended on, and that place of anchoring themselves, having that place to separate work from home, because it was both, right? They worked and they were home and they didn't have that third place at that time to go to. So I don't know, it was one of those wonders that came out of the readings.
Maybe I don't think I'm creative because I've never had anyone really listen or affirm some creative ideas I've had. Yeah. Third place, got to find that place right there. I was thinking, and Ann and I had this conversation, I think even before COVID, with the and all of the data seems to suggest this, the advent of the internet and cell phone technology and all of that, we have numbers to show you if you're curious. The socialization among people has dropped significantly. We used to go, a number of us would hear faculty would go to the masthead, you know, like on a Friday afternoon or something. When I taught evening classes, I would always take students too. I checked their ID first, but it was just great to talk about things from the class in a different place. Where's the masthead? Well, anyway, now people are more likely to, I'll text you, I'll send you an email about that rather than let's sit down and talk.
But the problem with that is create an AI character, an AI place, you know, sim this and that. Yes, it could be about the same. Problem is when you're physically with everybody there, there's a difference, Gary. It's the smells, It's the hearing, it's the volume, stuff that you just can't get off of a simulation.
And you may not be aware of either. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
That brings up that, I'm just going to flip this over because
Thank
you
you.
just said that. It is the question. Can virtual take the place of a third place? Can it be an effective third place? So that was kind of our question we talked about.
Very quickly, I'm going to do this because when do we have to stop here, Courtney? Okay, we can do that. Adam Frazier's another book here. It's called How to Use Life's Little Transitions to Find Balance and Happiness. So he gives us a model about how to use our third space. Once we have it, okay, how can I make it work for me most efficiently? Well, of course, he suggests the number of things that Anna and I have said about home being the first space and work being the second. It may be that work is chaotic and hostile, which is just difficult for you. And maybe home is the more placid, comforting place. So that's nice, right? But if your work is hostile, don't you need a transition before you go home? I suppose a lot of people, at least in the past, mill workers, et cetera, would stop at a tavern or a bar, decompress before they go, put themselves in a better mood. But Fraser also says that they can switch places. You could have a really volatile, chaotic home environment and work is your escape. So, but he still says that third space, right in the middle here, take time when you're in it. Ask yourself these questions. How do I interpret what happened to me at work? How I'm feeling about it? Take a little time to rest, then breathe, be mindful. If we think about these things and practice them, we will see a change. And I'll share with you a little bit of the research on this. And lastly, let's just use the original example that I'm at work and I know it's stressful and I need to do something before I come home. So I'm going to go, I don't know, with my friends, even if it is for a drink or something, to do these things and think about how now, you didn't give me directions. How will I show up when I go home, when I go to work? So I'm thinking about these things. And Anna and I are going to give you one. This was not suggested. I don't have the source, but the idea of HALT, who's familiar with HALT? Anyone? Oh, good. This is great then. It's been used in a lot of sobriety programs. So now you'll know a little bit more about me. And a lot of chemical dependency and other things too. Right now they have curriculums for children in how to use HALT. So by the way, if you want more resources on this, you could send me an email and I would give them to you. So with HALT, and I'm just going to put this all down, is that, and I'll give you some examples here. HALT, H stands for hungry. So I know that sometimes when I go home, I'm irritable. Take a moment and assess, am I hungry? Now, for me personally, I don't feel hunger. Wouldn't that be a good thing? But if I don't eat, what happens? I get really irritable and grumpy. So for me, I have to ask, is my blood sugar low? Have I eaten anything, etc.? So these can change. But once you teach your grandchildren or your children this technique, they may start yelling at you, HALT, because it means take time out and deal with this. Am I angry? Do I go home then from work angry? I need to do something with that. Maybe you're not an angry person. Maybe you don't feel anger, but maybe you have a lot of anxiety or grumpy or irritable. But to assess your overall emotional tone, then, are you lonely? Well, even if you're not lonely, could you possibly be overwhelmed? And when you're overwhelmed, it feels like you're alone. Maybe you're on the autism spectrum and it's easy for you to have lots of sensory overload. But just knowing this, asking yourself the questions are very, very helpful. Am I tired? Is that the reason I don't show up very well at home or at work? And maybe it's not just that you didn't get enough sleep, but is a problem for the majority of people in the United States. Maybe you're exhausted or fatigued. So taking this step, that moment in your third place to do this, or Fraser suggests even in your car, right, on your way home, turn on the music and go through these steps of halt. And just doing that, the research shows you're going to be a much nicer person when you get to wherever you're going. Fraser did research with over 200 participants, and he gave them this assignment for 6 months, is to use the HALT method in between their first and second place. At the end of the 6 months, 41% of those participants said it made a major difference in how they were showing up. I think that's good enough to just try it. But do you see how you could, do you see how you could teach children this? Okay, stop. You're being real pissy right now. Halt. And even preschool age children can learn to take a moment and think about what's going on with them. Do you remember what the question was? And where
It
are
was
we?
our
Oh,
other, go ahead.
I think I know. Do you think, I won't get it correctly, this is the technology. Do you think that social media, cell phones, etc., have helped us or hurt us so far as having third places? You could just shout out some things. Hurt? We gotta hurt.
Let me count the ways.
Okay.
The family of 5, everybody's texting at the table at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Information's coming too fast, too furious, and you're not able to process it.
Go ahead, Natalie. Yeah.
I think of the FaceTiming, that how it helped our military when they were away, separate from their homes and their families and their children. That kind of helped them get that belonging. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, in the pandemic, it became very apparent that there was a big disparity on who had access to the internet. And yeah, we do make that assumption, don't we? Mhm. Good point.
Yeah, that point that you made about the military being able to see home. Actually, I've had that happen a lot. When we finally got the resources, I actually found it more comforting. That was actually written, it meant something by someone to write that letter to you.
And both, yeah. I spoke, my niece was in Afghanistan for a number of tours, and having that FaceTime with her boys at home really helped her. But how many of you write letters anymore? That's a dying art. Great, awesome.
I think about writing letters.
I
That-
started
is
writing
that not
letters in the
good?
pandemic again. I started that because I think it's becoming a lost art, and people do like getting letters or cards picked out especially for them.
We have another comment coming in from chat as well. Trey says, I'd say in a broad sense, hurt, though perhaps helped in some individual cases.
Mm.
And I've found that it's been very useful to keep in touch with people who are far away. If you've moved a lot.
Since we only have a couple minutes left, we'll go through some of this at the end really fast, and then you can access it then if you want to take more time to read it. But let's just see what has happened. Looking at the research, this is the Pew research, of course, from 95 to 20. So this is just on the beginning of COVID. Family dinners have declined by 43%. And then one of you, was it Lola, who said, when you go to restaurants, and you just see the whole family on cell phones. So that really can't be a third place, right? Club meetings have dropped by 58%. Friends over, who has had friends over in the last 2 years? But even this was before COVID. Less than 50% attend church today, down from 70% in 95. Boy Scouts, well, think of all youth organizations. They've dropped an average of 50% all. Boy Scouts are much higher because look, 4 million in 1970 to 750,000 today. Well, a lot of that has to do with the pedophilia and sexual abuse, but still, we're losing all of those constructive, healthy youth groups. This is the one, because I'm working with seniors right now, 70% of seniors who are in care facilities do not get any visitors. Well, what we know today is this socialization that we're talking about, belonging, is crucial for us, even more so as we get older. We'll be healthier, live longer, all of those things. We'll just put this up here. Why did Ann and I choose the picture? Who is that right in the middle? Tom Hanks is the most trusted individual in the United States. Johnny Depp, it comes down to. Anyway, this is the human dilemma that we have, is that to be an individual and then be part of. If I don't have one of those, I'm going to be incomplete. I'm going to be unhealthy, psychological. So really, who are we if we don't have other people? The major motivation for all humans is to be an individual and belong at the same time, a constant struggle. The American Psychological Association gave a report that social isolation in 2019 was a leading cause of depression, poor sleep, impaired thinking, accelerated cognitive decline, impaired cardiovascular function, and our immunity. Is that one of the reasons why the elderly took the biggest hit with COVID? Possibly. Oh, the little hands are, okay. We can just put this up. Oh, I'll back up. I suppose that as we move towards the end here, we need to do more. We need to create third places, 3 places we have. We can make them better. As I was working at a senior breakfast, I'm thinking, this is nice. It needs to happen more often. These seniors really enjoy that getting together and talking, and the food is free, and I'd go there all the time, I think. Okay. See if this fits any of you. So what does the research say? The more that we access technology, the less socialization that we have. That in-person, face-to-face touch, smell, hug. Yeah.
Replacing. Mhm.
And
I'm a hugger and I do not like that.
come on, there. I always did these surveys with teens. There would always be a significant number that said they would spend over 12 hours a day.
And we're seeing the effects
Yeah,
of that.
we are
Increased
indeed.
depression.
And of course, it
suicidal thoughts.
increased during COVID, because these are pre-COVID. And overall, you can see this, that in March 2019, but in just 2 years' time, you can see the green there. Social media does more to bring us together, 35%. In that 2-year span, it had dropped to 27. Social media does more to divide us. It dropped from 57 to 64 in just 2-year period. So even most of us know this is not really helpful for us. We're still doing it. Okay, so we can actually, maybe as we don't have time to answer questions, maybe you could just shout out some short questions. What are you left with all of this? Or, don't look at that, Courtney, that's you.
Oh, I was just gonna say how important a third place is.
I'm going to create some third places now. I'll invite all of you. too.
Take away, like where can you set up some third spaces and third places?
Oh. Right outside the classroom here, that area for students is a third space, but not a third place. So probably the park across from the Civic Center, across from the hotel, that would be a third space. It could be a third place, but only for those people that would manage it that way. They would go there together, et cetera, and do things. But it was created so that could happen. So third spaces are created so that people can develop third places out of them.
I was going to say that I don't necessarily have a third place, but I do have a group of people that, and we get together as much as possible at like each other's houses and have
Yeah.
food and drink and, you know, good conversation and whatever. And it's not necessarily a specific place, but it's a specific group of people.
It's
So that's kind of-
metaphorical. It's a rotating space or place, right? So you don't need even a physical setting necessarily to create the third space. Yeah, yeah.
And it meets those needs about being fulfilled and having that sense of community and
I've traveled 48 states here, and I've done a lot of bus trips. And a lot of these companies are like from Europe or Australia. So you get on these buses for weeks and weeks at a time, and you really meet a lot of different people. And from these
Wow.
bus trips, I've made lots of friends from all over the world, and you really connect because, you know, you're with them 24 hours a day. You're having fun, you're eating, you're drinking, you're traveling, you're learning. It's all pretty much.
That's great.
history.
I hadn't thought about that. Think of those people that commute every day by train and bus and even airplanes, I suppose. It's the same people.
I've ran into
yeah.
people that travel like you do, and they meet people from different places in the world, and they plan other trips together. So then you still have those regulars, and then there's other people coming as well. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Cool.
We want to take a moment to acknowledge
Yes.
Courtney.
And really,
We were
when-
going to show a video, but we decided just on the slide.
when Michael and I were doing this work partway through, we really did go, community conversations does check a lot of those boxes for
Ah.
so many of us. And so we wanted to take a moment and just give some gratitude to Courtney. Because she takes all this time and care every quarter to decide on a different topic, to get people to come in and speak. And it is a lot of work. And we truly are so grateful that you have created this third place for us to come.
Well, thank you so much. And I do want to say I have a lot of help doing this. I'm so thankful for the people who volunteer to come and speak, but also the people who help brainstorm ideas and stuff. So it is not a one-woman show, but I do appreciate the thank you and the flowers.
And
And spread the
Courtney,
news.
Anne gave me the task of finding puppies for you. They have to be
Always good.
virtual because I couldn't find any. So Courtney loves puppies. So
I do.
puppies and babies.
So we
Um,
encourage you guys to invite people that you know to come to community conversations and increase the third place gatherings.
I wanted to leave you with some homework. We wanted to leave you with some homework too. Things that you can do, right? I mean, I think now that knowing about all this, working with Anne, I can make my volunteer work with seniors much more valuable for them, kind of increase the socialization and everything because of this. And just becoming aware. Even sports can be that way for children, but team sports, not individual sports, you know, like tennis doesn't quite work all the time. But then we have to be very careful about that as well, too.
Well, thank you so much to Michael and Anne, and thank you to our audience, both live and in our virtual space. Thanks for helping make this community conversation series a success. And please come again in the fall. We are off during the summer, but we will be back in the fall, and keep a lookout on lowercolumbia.edu/conversations. That's our website, and we'll be updating that with information when we get it. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, thank you. for
Thanks,
coming.
Anne.
Thank
You
Michael.
did good. Thanks, guys, for coming. Yeah.
Happy Friday Eve.